Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Tension high in St. Thomas a day after an angry mob kills a man, or reporter Anthony Love. Security Minister again defends the use of states of emergency. And later in sports, Reggae Boys stay 59th in latest FIFA World Rankings. I'm Giovanni Dennis and here are the details. A day after a man was killed by an angry mob in St. Thomas, tension remains high in the parish. Levi Chambers was killed on Wednesday by residents on the hunt for Davian Bryan, the man police listed as a suspect in the 2 cases of abduction in Bath in the parish. The family of Mr. Chambers is now trying to heal following the gruesome murder. Now reporter Anthony Lugg is in St. Thomas and starts us off.
Thank you. So I'm currently in the community of South Haven here in St. Thomas, and South Haven is the community where Levi Chambers resided. Now, Levi Chambers is the man who was killed by an angry mob just yesterday morning when residents killed him in what has been described as a case of mistaken identity. Now, I have been speaking with Mr. Chambers' family, and here's what they had to say.
It's a puzzle why he was in that community. How him reach in that community. And let me set the record straight. My brother is not mentally ill. My brother is not mentally ill. So if them are going to use that as a scapegoat or a class, them can forget about that.
The thought that you're not going to see back Levi again.
No one knows. This morning, I'm going bedside and say a prayer for him. Hopefully where he is, I don't know if he's in a better place because life
Now, while the family tries to pick up the pieces, the police say they continue their investigation as they try to find those responsible for the death of Mr. Chambers. Now, we will be monitoring the situation here in the parish and will provide you with updates in subsequent newscasts. It's back to you in studio.
Thanks for that report, Anthony Lugg. Meanwhile, at least one attorney is this afternoon supporting calls for the use of electronic tracking devices for persons out on bail. It's reported that the suspect in the abduction of the 2 girls in St. Thomas was on bail pending the outcome of a court case in his home parish of Portland. The matter was discussed on the morning agenda on Power 106. Herman Green has that angle.
In her contribution to the State of the Constituency debate in Parliament Wednesday evening, East St. Thomas MP Dr. Michelle Charles said electronic monitoring devices should be used to track people who are out on bail. This follows the abduction of 2 young girls in Bath, St. Thomas, allegedly by a man currently before the court on a rape charge. Attorney at law Isaac Buchanan says offenders have a right to get bail, but agrees that the use of tracking devices should be considered.
The monitoring bracelet can act as a form of house arrest and track limited movement. So I think it's a very good introduction to the arsenal.
Founder of Hear the Children's Cry, Betty Ann Blaine, is adamant that no bail should be given to persons charged with serious offences.
Every citizen has rights and rights under our Constitution. However, I believe that if somebody charged with rape, and particularly rape of a child, and also is charged with illegal possession of a firearm, those 2 things are deadly serious. I do not think that that person should be given bail.
She's also hammering at the government to make the sex offenders registry open to the public.
Somebody who is supposedly a rapist and with a gun, really? And how do you give that person bail? It's crazy. And so this is something we're concerned about, but also we are calling for the sex offender registry to be made public. The public has a right to know.
Herman Green, TVJ News.
To other news, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang is again insisting that the states of emergency are useful in the fight against crime. Dr. Chang sought to defend the use of states of emergency during his contribution to the debate on changes to the Emergency Powers Act in Parliament last evening. Javon Keys has more.
Not for the first time, the National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang insisting that states of emergency save lives. He pointed to St. James in particular, arguing that when the measure was introduced in the parish, murders dropped significantly.
When it was first introduced over the 379-day period, the reduction was well over 100%.
He argues that there are many benefits of using the SOEs.
We can use intelligence under the state of emergency to detain someone. That is the primary benefit and what comes out of it. And therefore you can stop a killer from his activities.
Dr. Chang said 50% of persons detained under the SOEs imposed in Hanover, St. James and Westmoreland last year, August, have been charged.
At the end of the last call of the state of public emergency, and there have been 5 so-called, 2020, August, all of them were discontinued. The police had in custody, on detention, roughly 240 individuals. 240. Not 1,000, not 500, 240. Of which 50% were charged before. The others who have been released are identified and known gangsters. Several migrated immediately. Several have been shot in inter-gang war, and some have been returned to incarceration because of their own. At this point, there's enough evidence to lock them up.
In September 2020, Supreme Court Judge Justice Bertram Morrison declared as unconstitutional and unlawful the detention of 5 men under the states of public emergency. Some of the men were in custody for more than a year without being charged with any crime. The matter is now before the Court of Appeal. In the meantime, Justice Minister Delroy Chuck says both the Emergency Powers Act and the Emergency Public Security Act were enacted in 1938 and 1939 respectively, and are in need of reform. Parliament started the debate on changes to the laws on Wednesday, but will resume next Tuesday.
The amendments are quite small, Madam Speaker, but important. We are constrained in our plans for further reform at this point, but we need to do this because just recently in a case, Douglas, the court pointed out a defect in the Emergency Powers Act in that it was not consistent with the Constitution. We were aware of this, Madam Speaker, and the change should have been done long ago. And in fact, Madam Speaker, the amendment should have been done after the Charter of Rights was enacted. But since 2011, 2012, it has not been done.
Javon Keys, TVJ News.
And it's now time for a break here on the Midday News, but please stay with us. We'll have much more when you return. Welcome back. We're continuing the news. Mayor of Spanish Town, Norman Scott, is accusing the government of playing politics with the Farmwork program. Mr. Scott says councillors have not received any Farmwork cards for distribution and it's unfair. Sandy Williams reports.
All Farmwork cards issued last year September were withdrawn and redistributed to sitting members of Parliament. According to Labour and Social Security Minister Carson Muda, in his sectoral debate presentation in Parliament in April, the move was to ensure equity. 6 months later, Mayor of Spanish Town Norman Scott is expressing his dissatisfaction.
It is the first that no councillors have been allocated Farmwork farms. And it is really an uttermost disgrace to know that members of Parliament, they have been allocated as much as 50 Farmwork farms. It has gone up from 40 to 50. And the councillors who used to get 5, none has been allocated to councillors.
He believes Farmwork cards should also be distributed to councillors. Mr. Scott explains that councillors, especially those located in deep rural areas, are most times the first point of contact for constituents.
Councillors are the first line of defense. It is the first representative that the people meet. And councillors all over Jamaica now are being called upon by citizens to give and receive Farmwork farms. And it is so bad. The citizens are calling on us and we can't respond to them. The citizens in the rural communities, they look to their councillors for this. And when a councillor cannot allocate a farmwork farm to one of the citizens, it is bad.
Mr. Scott says the government is playing politics with the allocation of farmwork cards.
I think it is playing cheap politics. The governing party now has 49 MPs in Parliament, and it is the reason why they have reallocated the numbers from 40 to 50, and so they know that they have the majority of members of Parliament, and the few councillors that are in the councils are very much disenfranchised, and it is a political ploy.
The Popular Farmwork Program is a long-standing government-to-government arrangement which provides overseas employment to thousands of Jamaicans on a seasonal basis. Mr. Scott wants councillors to be included in the allocation.
It would be good if we could go up to 10, but we will settle for the 5 that we used to get. So I'm calling on the Prime Minister to do something about this.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
While overall vaccination coverage has reached 41% in Latin America and the Caribbean, surveillance will remain key to identifying new risks and responding to local infection hotspots. That's according to the Pan American Health Organization at its latest media briefing on Wednesday. Shamila Pullen reports.
On Wednesday, Director of the Pan American Health Organization, Dr. Carissa Etienne, warned of increased infection rates in parts of Latin America and the Caribbean. Dr. Etienne says, as such, there's a need to track and manage infections closely as vaccine rollout continues.
Surveillance has always been the eyes and ears to guide our COVID response. From when the first case was detected in our region, as we navigated our pandemic peaks, and as we continue to track emerging variants.
She says PAHO is seeing more and more local hotspots that are driving national COVID-19 trends. According to Dr. Etienne, it's why health authorities should have a clear picture of developments at the local level and quickly communicate the risks and the public health measures needed to reduce transmission.
By empowering local institutions like laboratories, public health schools, and universities to diagnose new infections locally as part of the national surveillance efforts, local municipalities can detect risk more quickly and remain on the pulse of emerging trends.
Dr. Etienne says enhancing homegrown detection capacities also means ensuring that there are enough local testing sites and that clinicians know which COVID-19 tests are worth referring for epidemiological surveillance.
Acting smart also means making the most of what the data tells us. And that's why PAHO has developed a modeling tool that tracks cases and forecasts short-term trends. This modeling tool helps countries measure the impact of different public health measures to inform their response.
Shamila Pullen, TVJ News.
4 more persons have died from COVID-19 in Jamaica. The death toll is now 2,133. The latest fatalities occurred between October 17 and October 19. And COVID-19 hospitalizations increased by 4 to 360. 39 of those admitted are severely ill, while another 23 are in critical condition. Meanwhile, 74 new cases were confirmed on Wednesday from 564 samples. The positivity rate is 11.9%. The overall case count is now 87,797. And it's now time for the Business Minute with O'Shane Masters.
Government-imposed restrictions and increased lockdown days in August and September caused a plunge in profit at Supreme Ventures. The company's net profit fell by 49.9% to $312 million during the July to September period. Supreme Ventures' total income from gaming was $10 billion, a 2.5% decline compared to last year. The reduction was due to sizable payouts for its cash pot game. Total prizes paid for the quarter amounted to $14.7 billion, which was 5% higher than the same period in 2020. More people were employed in Jamaica as at July this year compared to the same period in 2020. Director General of Statin, Carol Coy, at the quarterly briefing of the body yesterday, said 1.2 million persons were in the employed labor force.
This was 93,400 more, or 8.3% more, when compared to July 2020. The number of employed males increased by 55,700, or 9%, while employed females increased by 37,700, or 7.5%, when compared to July in 2020.
And we go now to Sandy Williams with the latest regional and international stories.
In the region, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, IICA, has named St. Lucian Kathleen Carew as its Goodwill Ambassador for Sustainable Development Issues, making her the youngest and first ever Afro-Caribbean IICA Goodwill Ambassador for Sustainable Development. Carew is the founder and executive director of Helen's Daughters, a local non-profit organization focusing on rural women's economic development through improved market access, adaptive agricultural techniques, and capacity building. Further afield, Russia's capital, Moscow, will reimpose a citywide lockdown to curb the spread of COVID-19. The city's mayor made the announcement Thursday on his blog, saying the lockdown will be in place between October 28 and November 7. The mayor said the work of most organizations will be suspended, except for sale of medicine, food, and other essential goods. Restaurants and cafes will be allowed to offer takeout and delivery. The lockdown announcement comes 2 days after the mayor ordered all unvaccinated residents over 60, as well as immunocompromised unvaccinated people, to remain home for 4 months until late February as the city grapples with the growing crisis. And that's the top regional and international stories. I'm Sandy Williams.
Welcome back. It's now time for Midday Sports. I'm Simon Preston. The Reggae Girls clipped Costa Rica 1-0 in a behind-closed-doors scrimmage match today in Florida. Chelsea midfielder Drew Spence scored in her first appearance for Jamaica from the penalty spot in the 81st minute. The Jamaicans will face Costa Rica in an international friendly on Sunday in Fort Lauderdale. This game will be geared towards preparation for the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup qualifiers next year. Over to the men now, as despite gaining 5 rating points, the Reggae Boys have remained 59th in the world in the October edition of the FIFA World Rankings. The increase in rating points comes after the Reggae Boys blanked Honduras 2-0 in the CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers earlier this month. In the other 2 matches in the window, Jamaica drew 0-0 with Canada and fell 2-0 to the United States. There was no change in the top 5 of CONCACAF, as Mexico continues to lead the way at 9th in the world, followed by the United States at 13th, Costa Rica at 45th, and Canada at 48th. Jamaica stays 5th in CONCACAF and number 1 in the Caribbean. The top 10 ranked teams in the world reads Belgium, Brazil, France, Italy, England, Argentina, Spain, Portugal, Mexico, and Denmark. Reggae boy Kemar Roof will be looking to extend his goal-scoring form with his club as Rangers FC will face Danish side Brøndby in the UEFA Europa League in Glasgow this afternoon. Roof has scored 6 goals in 11 appearances this season for the defending Scottish champions. Rangers will be searching for their first win of the Europa League this season. Kick-off is at 2 o'clock Jamaica time. Another Reggae boy in Mikel Antonio and West Ham United will host Belgian side Genk, also at 2 o'clock. West Ham will be searching for their 3rd straight win in the competition. And finally this afternoon, the West Indies women's cricket team will continue their preparations ahead of the World Cup qualifiers as they will travel to face Pakistan in 3 one-day internationals next month. The Caribbean side will face Pakistan on November 8, 11 and 14 in Karachi. The West Indies players are in Antigua for a high-performance training camp as part of the team's preparation for the Pakistan tour and the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. The Windies are due to arrive in Pakistan on November 1. The Cricket World Cup qualifiers are slated to run from November 21 to December 5 in Zimbabwe. Only the top 3 teams in the 10-team tournament will qualify for the 2022 Women's Cricket World Cup in New Zealand. And that is where we'll pull up stumps for now. For your Midday Sports Report, I'm Simon Preston. Giovanni, it's over to you.
Thanks, Simon. And that is it indeed, where we leave the field of play as well here on the Midday News. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.